In this short video series, I'm going to show you how Report Builder interacts with PowerPoint. By the end of the series, you should have a good understanding of how Report Builder knows what template to use when you import data. Things like where to put the chart, where to put the text, and so on. You'll also know how to take a completely different template, whether that's a client template or a new internal template, and prepare it for use within Report Builder so that you can go to layout settings and import it against any project that you're working in. We're going to kick things off with a bit of a deeper dive into how Report Builder interacts with PowerPoint, and that will involve an introduction to PowerPoint slide masters and then the different objects within. So you see here on the right hand side with this template that I've just imported, I have access to different layouts, and they have that it's already pulling in the question text. It's pulling in this case, the question text again, and sample information at the bottom. But if I go back to the original layout, just got question text here, sample information here, and one placeholder for a chart. This is all being driven by the PowerPoint slide master. This is the template that I imported. Those layouts that we were just looking at are also available within here from my new slide button. So if we go into the slide master, this is what's driving everything. So when you import a template into Report Builder, it's looking at these layouts and it's giving you access to these content placeholders. But there are certain things within the slide master that we can do to preemptively tell Report Builder, this is where I want you to put the question text, or this is where I want you to put the sample information. Before we go much further into that, I just want to talk a little bit about the types of placeholders that we're looking for within Report Builder. So number one, text boxes. Those are editable within Report Builder. But if it finds predetermined tags like question, that's already telling the platform, this is where I want the question text to go. We'll come back to tags a little bit later on. Other thing it's looking for is a content placeholder. Now, you could use chart placeholders or you could use table placeholders. Those are different things. You have chart placeholder, table placeholder. I would always recommend using a content placeholder because within a content placeholder, you can obviously input either a chart or a table. Now, there's no limit to the number of these different objects that you can have within the platform. The only other warning I would give you at this stage is don't use a content placeholder for your text boxes. Use specific text placeholders, because if you use a content placeholder, that's telling the platform that you might want to put a chart in that object, and obviously you do not want to. So this layout is slightly different to the other one, but you can see I've got two content placeholders. You could have 5, you could have 6, you could have 20. It's up to you. When you receive a new template from a customer or maybe an internal team or something like that, there are going to be a few things that you will need to do in order to prepare it to be ready to use within Report Builder. If I switch over to another version of this template, this is more typical in terms of what we would get from a customer if they're asking us to set up a template for them to use in Report Builder. You might see a bunch of example slides in the report. Usually I see some kind of instructions of when to use specific slides, when to use specific chart types, all of that kind of stuff will be detailed within the PowerPoint template. Now, one thing to know is that when you export from Report Builder, any new slides that you create will be appended to the bottom of what's already in there. So if I was to upload this template and then download from Report Builder, all of my new slides will start at slide number 11. So it's worth taking that into consideration. So the first thing that I would usually do is save a copy of the report and call it something like template working. And then I'd have the copy open and the original open, and I'll work in the copy. So I've always got the original to fall back on if I need to. Then I will delete any slides that I don't think I want to appear when I export from Report Builder. That doesn't mean that they're gone forever now. All of those slide layouts are still available to me from this slide master. They're still there. But now when I export, I don't have a bunch of random slides before I even get to the ones that I've exported from the platform. Now we're ready to jump into the slide master. So if we go View, Slide Master, it should say these are individual slide masters, and then within the slide masters we have individual layouts. So that's the terminology I'm going to use. This template has 3 different slide masters within it, and then the layouts are within the slide master. When you import a template into the platform, it uses whatever the first layout is, right? So in this case, my first layout is the title page, which makes logical sense if you were using this as a standard template. But actually within Report Builder, we have more interest in the slides that are going to contain charts and tables. So they might be within one slide master. You might see multiple layouts below here. This template happens to have separate slide masters available for charting. So I'm going to make a copy of this master, Control C, and I'm just going to put it at the top. The reason I'm making a copy rather than just moving it is that I don't want to mess with anything that already exists. I'm leaving those in there so that they're still available to the user. Once they've exported from the platform, they'll still have access to all of those different layouts. Now that I've got a copy, I'm just going to get rid of any slides that don't contain content placeholders or don't look like they're being set up to contain charts or tables. And again, because I didn't delete the original slide master, it's not like these things don't continue to exist. They're still in there. They're just lower down. Here they are. Okay. On to placeholder basics. And actually to do this, I'm going to just add a brand new layout that doesn't contain any text boxes or content placeholders or anything like that at all. Let's just get rid of all of these things. We'll come back to some of these things a little bit later on. We're starting with almost a blank slate. If I wanted to build out a slide from scratch, I'm just going to do some basic things. I'm going to insert, firstly, a content placeholder where I want my chart to go. So I can position this anywhere on the slide. Just going to do that, just whack it in the middle like that. And this can be any size you want it to be. This is already telling the platform, I'm going to put my chart in this box here. Next, I'm going to insert a text box and I'm going to place that somewhere as well. So let's just place it at the top here. This is just a standard text box. And again, this can go anywhere on the slide. And then within here, I'm just going to highlight all of the text and delete it. And I'm just going to put in a tag that says question. Here we go. I'm going to do some formatting here. I'm just going to make sure that this is all set up nicely. So there's a few things that I normally do as standard practice. I just make sure that bullet points are definitely turned off. I've got a habit of just turning them on and off again, just to be 100% sure. Even sometimes when you can't see a bullet point, you export and the bullet point's still there. So if you just click it on and off, you make sure that it's definitely not there. And I can make some choices around the font type and size as well. So maybe I want the font size to be a bit smaller, bold. Let's go Poppins medium. That could be any font type you want, any font color you want, all of those types of things. Position it in the middle. And I'm just going to make sure, let's put all of these to none, 0. change? Yeah, that did change. I always kind of come back and double check that. Sometimes you have to highlight the actual text itself. But okay, so now if we were to just import this layout, this template into the platform, the question text is going to be up here. The chart's going to be in the middle. Let's just go ahead and close the slide master, and I'll show you that in practice as well. Save the template, place the theme. And this is the one we are working on. There you go. I've got my text at the top, chart in the middle. The banners disappeared from the bottom, and I'll talk a little bit about that as well in a second. If we jump down to the next one though, the chart's appearing because the content placeholder is there, but we haven't put a tag in the text box. I can still click on this box and type something into it, but other than that, it's not already preloading it with anything. So that's the next thing we'll come on to. So back on the slide we just created, there are 3 different tags that are of interest to you. And when I say tag, that's basically something that goes in between these curly brackets. That's how you indicate to the platform that we've got a tag. And the 3 tags that are useful are question, base, and statistics. Now these tags can go in any text box. So I could have multiple text boxes on this slide, and within those I could have individual tags, or I could have all of the tags, and the tags can appear more than once. So here, let's just change this, make this text smaller. You can put them on different lines. And what this does is it tells the platform, okay, the question text goes here, the sample information is going to go here, and if I apply SIG testing within the platform, it's going to tell me a little bit about the stat test that's been applied, and it's going to pop it in here. Usually you wouldn't have all of this information up here. You might just have the question text or something like that. This text box down here will do exactly the same thing. The difference being when I export it, the font size is going to be smaller. The question text will be on one line, and then the base and the stat testing information will be on another line as well. All of that being said, it's actually very rare that I'm creating new slide layouts from scratch, right? Like I'm usually coming into the slide master and recreating slides that already exist, or using slide layouts that already exist and just amending them. So actually, if we get rid of this, and then if we go view, home, arrange, selection pane, this is kind of more typical of what my starting point might look like. And it's quite important for me to just flag something within here to you. So here at the top, we have what looks like a text placeholder. And it is a text placeholder, but it's a very specific type of text placeholder. It is a title placeholder. Other placeholders you might come across that are text placeholders are footer placeholders, slide number placeholders, and date placeholders. If we want to map tags to placeholders, we want to make sure that we are using standard text placeholders and not any of those other types of text placeholder. So to achieve that, I would go slide master, insert text placeholder, and just put one over the top of the placeholder that already exists. I'll take the title placeholder and just move it out of the way. I'm just pressing the down arrow. I'm not deleting it yet because I want to use that, because now I'm going to go home, format painter, and just point at the new placeholder. There we go. Then my text will match the formatting of the original placeholder. So effectively there, we've just replaced the title placeholder with a standard text placeholder. A couple of things that I am just going to do, the usual, turn the bullet point on and off, and also just check. Maybe I'll get rid of this indentation, and yeah, check this is in the middle. Fine. Now I can just start putting a tag in here to do that question. And then I do want to put some base information and the statistics tag at the bottom of this slide. So rather than just adding a brand new text placeholder, I'll just create a copy of this one. It's fine to create a copy of an existing text placeholder. That doesn't affect anything. I'm just going to make this slightly smaller, slightly narrower, and I'm going to make the font smaller as well. And within here, I'm just going to put base and statistics. Okay, let's see. Yeah, I'm happy with that. The only thing is, I think there are occasions where I don't want the question text at the top. I want to leave a space for me to be able to type into. So now that I've created this slide once, I'm just going to duplicate it. And instead of putting my question text up here, I'm going to leave that blank. And then at the bottom, I'm just going to put my question text. Now I have two different layouts that are kind of similar, but serve a slightly different purpose that will be available to me within Report Builder. I might go even further and have one that's got the question text at the top. And I might make my slide placeholder a little bit smaller and then insert a new text placeholder that is going to be for some simple commentary, something like that. And again, I'll mess around with the font just to make sure that it's all okay and everything like that. And then, of course, let's get rid of this one. You can take other layout types and try and recreate these as well. So here, for example, let's just move this up. I have two content placeholders because I want to be able to put two charts on one slide. Rather than having to like change these and move these around, I can just kind of get rid of some of these things. Move my content placeholders up. And then it's really easy for me to go to the original version that we created, just highlight. I've just held down Control, selected the two different items, copy and paste them onto my new slide. So you can see how you can kind of start to build out slides quite quickly by doing this. And you can create different layouts with different number of content placeholders. You can duplicate content placeholders. So for example, if I wanted a three chart version, you can do that as well. It's kind of trial and error until you've got all of the layouts that you're happy with, but you can see how you can start to build these out as well. Just taking this back to how it was before we started messing around with the different layouts and adding a third layout and everything like that. It's good practice to, as you're building things, just test them out in Report Builder, make sure that everything's working as you expect. So to do that, always make sure that you close the slide master view. If you don't, sometimes it tries to open the new PowerPoints that you create in slide master view, which is a bit weird. So just close that and hit save. Then you can go into Report Builder, and on a dummy project or something like that, you can just upload that new template that you're working on and start to make sure it looks kind of as you're expecting. So here, layout number one, my question text is at the top, chart placeholder in the middle, base information at the bottom. The second layout that we've got has two different content placeholders on it, but the top and bottom boxes are the same. We had that version where we moved the question text to the bottom and so on. So this is all looking okay. The other thing I should note is that the color scheme is also being driven by the slide master. So let's just have a look at that as well. So the way that the platform determines what colors to use for the chart is by using this color scheme that comes from the slide master. And it prioritizes the accent colors. So when I've got one bar, it's always going to be this yellow color. And if I've got a second bar, it's going to be this color, red, green, and so on. These are your default colors. You can obviously override those in the app, and you can create custom presets in the app as well. So that's totally fine. But I would set this template up, or this slide master up, with a color scheme that makes sense for the majority of your charts. You can do that by coming in here, editing the accents and the other colors as well, and then saving it, giving it a name and hitting save. Each slide master can have different color presets, so it's worth keeping that in mind. Other than that though, there are a few small quirks that we should be aware of. For example, when we were looking at these slides within the app, there is no yellow banner across the bottom. The reason for that is that Report Builder renders images, but it doesn't render shapes. And this yellow banner is currently a shape. You can see here it says shape format. That's how you can tell it's a shape. So one thing that I can actually do is if I make a copy of this, or even if I cut this and then paste it as an image, this is now a picture rather than a shape. You see it now says picture format. Let's put this down here and let's move it to the back. And if I close this, save again, we can go and test that out. Fingers crossed. There we go. We've now got a yellow banner across the bottom. Next thing, the next quirk to make you aware of is the slide numbers. If I was to export that now, let's just do this, export current slide. I don't think the slide number will appear. Yeah, there you go. There's no slide number in here. You probably want your slide numbers to appear, right? So how do you make that work? Well, let's go back into that slide master. We do actually have a slide number here. I'm just going to move picture to the back, all the way to the back. Yeah, so now we can select this. But if I go into here, you can see again, we're using a slide number placeholder, and we already know that this app works nicely with text placeholders or text boxes, but not necessarily specific text boxes. So how I would make this work is by, rather than adding a text placeholder, I'm adding an actual text box now. And then within the actual text box, I'm just going to go insert slide number. Perfect. And then I'm just going to copy the formatting and apply it. There we go. So the formatting is exactly the same. And then I can just kind of overlay this. Get it pretty much exactly on, spot on. I'm going to need to change that again. Okay. And then I can delete this slide number placeholder. What I will need to do is go to all the other slides and just get rid of the slide number placeholder as well. Get the picture, we'll stop there. And if I close the slide master and save, let's just try that now. Replace. Import. Yes. Yeah, you don't see the slide number in here, but now when we export, fingers crossed, we get a slide with a slide number on it. There we go. Appearing now. Cool. So a lot of creating templates and layouts in the slide master is duplicating things that already exist and replacing things that already exist. So remembering the rules of using text boxes instead of title placeholders, and then copying and pasting those time and time again. So for example, if we wanted another placeholder that instead uses the dark banner at the bottom, I can basically follow the same logic, copy and paste that in, remove the ones that we don't want, but actually, because this is set up where it's just pointing the banner at a specific color scheme, I think I can just copy this and put it in here. There you go. And the blue banner is there. The only thing that I will need to do is redo the slide number. Take that on here, but make the font white. And I can copy all those other layouts down as well and bring them in too. So now again, if I close this slide master, hit save, replace this again. And it didn't change the first slide because we didn't change the first slide in the first slide master. But if I scroll down to slide master 2, same layout, just with a different banner at the bottom. And then fonts are quite important to be aware of. So the font that's being used for the question text and the base text is being determined by whatever those settings are for the individual items in the slide master. So here, if for example, I was to make this font completely random font type, highlighted yellow, and the color of the font is going to be red, whenever I use that and export it from the platform, it's going to follow that formatting. The only difference is in the chart. So when you actually export a chart, the chart settings within the app normally have font type set to auto. And what that means is it takes the font type directly from the template or the slide master itself. And what it's looking at is, let's just revert. What it's looking at is the fonts from here. So what you want to do is set a heading font and a body font that match whatever your template should be, and then save that. And those, when it uses auto, will be the fonts that it uses for those data labels and the category headers and the legend and so on. If you're using a custom font type, you just need to make sure that that is saved within the PowerPoint. And to do that, you go File, Options, Save, and you want to make sure that you embed all of the fonts, all of the characters, because if a person tries to export it from their version of the platform and they don't have those fonts installed on their machine, it's now embedded in the PowerPoint, so you won't lose any of those font characteristics as well. So if I save that template now, any custom fonts that I'm using will be available to me as well. And then obviously we've touched on testing and everything like that. And that doesn't necessarily matter so much if you're working on a template that you're just using for a one-off project, because if you find that you're missing a layout or you need a new layout, you can just take the pre-existing slide master, and add new layout below any that you've already selected. So just make sure that if I'm adding a new layout here, rather than just copying and pasting and it appearing here, just drag it to the bottom and make all of the edits that you want to make. That's because when you switch templates, if one slide is using this layout, it will default to whatever the new second layout is. And if you've reduced the number of chart placeholders, for example, you'll start losing charts. So just any new layouts go to the bottom, and then you can obviously import that into the template. But one of the first things I said when we started this video series is that we were going to look at how the platform knows what to use as the default template. And what it's doing is some users have the ability in the settings area to change the default template. You can see mine as this Indico Labs template, but actually I can choose another file and set that. If you have the ability to do that, when you change it, it changes it for everyone within your organization. So before you make any changes here, it's really important that in the project, in a test project, you just try out all of the layouts that you've created and make sure that they all make sense. And I would do that by literally creating a chart that has a specific view, something like this. And I would probably duplicate that multiple times and then just use a different layer. Duplicate, change the layout until I've got one for every single layout that I've created. And even in the text boxes, if I'm planning to use the text box, type something into it just so that when you export it, you can now export this entire thing and see how it looks. If you're happy with everything, you can then replace that as your default template. And any new projects going forwards, when you upload data, it will automatically land in that new default template. Old projects will still use the old templates. They won't be affected, but new templates will use that new template going forward. The other thing, just last thing to mention, is that when you export, if the chart doesn't look exactly how you're expecting to look, that isn't being driven by the template. Those things are being driven by the chart settings. And again, in your account settings, some users have the ability to create default chart settings. So if you don't have access to those and you find yourself having to always move the legend or something like that, speak to a member of your team who does have access to the chart settings, and they will be able to redefine the global chart settings for you as well. And that's it. So I would recommend as a next step, if you haven't already messed around with a slide master or tried this out for yourself, just take any template, create a copy of it, and start by duplicating a slide master and trying to recreate layouts that already exist and just import them against a dummy project and see how you get on. That's honestly the best way to learn. But if you get stuck or if you have any questions at all, feel free to reach out to me or any other team member and we'll be happy to help.